Welcome back to Programming TV. Today I want to be talking through a week of training for Stacy Cadenas, my co-owner with Lumber Capital Athletics. This is going to be basically the beginning of December. It's a new cycle for the gym, and while her training, because it's individual design, doesn't exactly mimic what the gym is doing, there's some certain themes that I think are good carryover based on just time of year and things like that, as well as she will occasionally jump into class workouts based on things that are like benchmarks or other cool workouts to do just for the sake of being in the community since she is the owner, as well as typically at least once a week she's jumping into a class as a second session for the day. So for example, she usually trains in the morning and then she might jump into an evening class, come back and train in the evening on those days. So those of you who aren't familiar with Stacy, she is a masters CrossFit competitor, and while she doesn't have any competitions on the radar like in the immediate future right now, especially with like the open being shaken up, like the 2025 season structure changing, it puts a lot of question marks into things. However, one thing is certain is that if she is going to compete in the future, it's just a matter of how long that's going to be and what exactly that looks like. So likely we're going to bias towards more in-person type events, and those are some of the things that are going to be held as priorities in her training, besides just trying to generally drive up as many fitness qualities as we can between strength and endurance and other concurrent qualities. So with all that said, let's dive in. Okay, so Stacy's actually doing her AM and PM that I alluded to, like the PM class on Monday right now, and doing in the morning then some lower work. So Sunday she does a lot of meal prep, like on her feet for hours and hours. So I often find that coming in and doing something that's a little bit easier on Monday morning is a good thing, especially if she's going to do some intensity that night, which is the case. So we're going to start off, have her 20 minutes on the ergs. Basically she gets to pick what she's on, what erg, what machine. And then so that's 20 minutes, nasal, just easy pace, just collecting some zone work essentially. And then from 20 to 30 minutes, she's going to be doing mobility work. And this is specific to snatches because today we're going to have some snatch, basically like technique and positional type work. So this is the A series. We're going to start off with behind the neck snatch grip push jerk because one of the things that's challenging for her is she tends to have her upper body kind of take over at the end of the movement. So it's helpful for her to practice, things like pause jerks where you're pausing in the catch, or in this case it would be like a push jerk, but it's tailored to a snatch where you're reinforcing that lockout position before you try to stand up the rep. Everybody's got their little movement flaws. That's one of the ones that for her that's going to be helpful. And then for her, typically I'm not going to, if it was like, snatch work that is going to be like heavier and more like neurally demanding, and you want the person to be like really like excited to lift from a neurological perspective, you're not going to do mobility work in between with that. However, in this case, because it's all late positional work throughout this entire session, I have her supersetting it with mobility work. So and that first one, it was the snatch grip, behind the neck snatch grip push jerk is with the saddle, and this pressing snatch balance with the empty bar is going to be with supersetted with a frog pose. And then finally we're going to do one more superset series. In this case it's a 3-position snatch, once again with a light weight, just working on her technique. And then we have banana face pulls and hamstring curls, which is 2 posterior elements of the body that are only helpful in keeping her joints happy. So that's the morning. Really simple, pretty boring, but important movement work to do. And then the class workout for that evening is Blue Monday. It's a partner workout. 1 person works, 1 person rests. 4-time, 35-minute cap, 200-calorie air bike, 100 deadlifts at 315 or 205, 200-calorie row, and 150 American kettlebell swings, 70/53. So basically, after you get off the air bike, it's all hinging, deadlift, row, kettlebell swing. I know the rowing is sort of an odd hinge. It's not like a traditional like deadlift type hinge. Same with the kettlebell swing. It's a little bit different, but more or less they're all hinging reps. So it's important that we're just mindful of that moving forward because, while I have a skeleton for our class workouts no different than any other type of client that I would have or design that I write, it is varying, and typically we're not going to have that much hinging in a workout, right? So you just need to be mindful of that moving forward. So that was her first day. The next morning, one of the things that I found for her is that if we go like heavy or like challenging for the lower body and do either volume or strength work, we're going to need to probably give that maybe close to 48 hours before we touch it again, just so that long term the joints stay healthy. Otherwise, we start to deal with nagging injuries. And that's also the case with me. And it's one of the things that I've implemented with my training. It's one of the things I've implemented with Stacy and tends to work really well, is a little bit more biased towards lower, a little bit more biased towards upper, and alternating back and forth in that kind of way. So next day, we're going to do more upper body focused things, just basically getting warmed up with a little bit of cyclical. And then we're going to go into some rope climb development. So starting off doing a prep routine and then some just rope climbs with legs, and then rope climbs, legless rope climb development, trying to get as high as she can, since that's one of the skills that we're continuing to work on developing. And then after that, we're also working on butterfly chest to bar, since she's really good with butterfly pull-up, but it starts to break down. She gets towards that chest to bar with a higher range of motion. So we move towards that, and then supersetting those with a parallel dip, where she's starting at a less aggressive rep range, and then continuing to build towards pushing closer and closer to failure on each set. So that was a lot of pushing and pulling work up to that point, more biased towards pulling. And then we're going to do a sport intervals with hanging and grip interference. So I want her back onto doing more gymnastics work, hanging from a pull-up bar, rings, or something along those lines, as well as other grip interfering movements. So this is what I came up with for this first day. 4 rounds for time, 10 dumbbells, farmer lunges. So we got the dumbbells by the sides, 12 toe to bar, 14 cow row, and 16 heavy double unders. So relatively manageable chunks of work, but that's going to keep the turnover pretty high. And also it's going to, as you can see, every single one of them has a gripping element. Like, rowing and heavy double unders is not exactly a ton of grip input, but it's still nonetheless, you're not getting a break at any point. It's not like we're doing alternating dumbbell snatches or something, right, where you can ever take your hands off of it. The only break you get is when you're actually transitioning back and forth between. So that was the sport work. And then after that, we're going to do some half kneeling staggered grip lat pull down, which is basically like sort of that lengthened lat position that you're going to get in something like a legless rope climb. It mimics that position really well, so an accessory for that. It's a little bit more of a finisher-based thing, and then straight arm tricep extension, which I found is similar to a barbell skull crusher, which I much prefer over dumbbell for the most part, just because I feel like it's a stronger stimulus. Okay, so Wednesday we're back to more hip-centric strength and battery work, as well as some lower accessories. So again, back to hitting things around the knee and hip. So we're going to do some battery work. This is one of the progressions that I wrote a while ago, and it's probably my favorite battery progression to date. They basically are building to some sort of a complex, whether a snatch or a clean jerk. Those are alternating weeks, snatch, clean jerk, that is. And then they're going to be doing some variants of that same variation in a battery format. So in this case, it is a 10-minute clock to find a heavy complex, a power clean, and 3 jerks. And then, so that's obviously a strength work, finding a max complex there. And then C is 4 sets with resting 2 minutes between for time, 20 calorie row, 3 power clean and jerk. And she is using 80% of the heaviest complex that she hits for the B part. So yeah, basically using percentage work off what they hit in that complex, which is, I really like doing that, where if it makes sense for the format to use percentage work off something that they already hit. And battery work is a great opportunity to do something along those lines, especially if the person already continues to need some top end strength throughout their season. Okay, so then we're going to go into our lower accessories. First is going to be a Bulgarian split squat. She gets really sore from these. I know because I've given to them in the past. We're going to start volume really low, 2 sets, 10 each side with 35 in the goblet, just to orient the chest more upright and torso more upright. And then obviously she's in that lunge split squat type position that's going to have all the benefits of single leg work. And then also we're going to do some more posterior. Again, with Monday being what it was, actually I had originally written RDL on this day instead of the Bulgarian split squat, and I subbed it out, remembering that this Monday PM piece with the 50 deadlifts at a heavy load or something that's probably going to be lingering with her for 72 hours or so. So just need to be mindful of that. So that's why I opted for one that's a little bit more knee flexion based, even though that can irritate her if we give her too much of that. Opting for that because there wasn't squatting on Monday, which there will be every other week. So that's why I opted for more of a squatty variation versus a more of a hip flexion variation or a hip extension. So hip extensions on the GHD is the follow-up to that. Those will, again, turn into RDLs and then probably keep it as a hip extension. And then GHDs just to continue to build up some tolerance as things like open are rolling around to make sure that if that were to come out, I don't see it coming out in that environment. But if they were, or even in like name games and things coming down the road, that'll also just help her not to be ruined when it comes back up. So that is Wednesday. Thursday, I really like having her jump into class because class is a lower day. And it's usually because it is things that are more erg-based, things that are a little bit less complex, right? We're not doing, percentage work of, snatches and handstand push-ups and workouts and things like that, right? Where it's going to take a lot more formal coaching. These are things where you kind of explain it to them, you give them a few focal points, and then you kind of essentially are watching them as the coach. So that's an opportunity for her to jump into class. So at least, she typically is coaching 2 classes on that day, so it allows her to at least jump into one of those. So it's every 7 minutes for 7 sets. For the females, it would be a 450-meter row and a 0.9-mile air bike. In class, I think it's supposed to be like a ramping effort where you start kind of moderate or relatively easy and build up in pace, ramping your effort throughout. For her, I just kind of want to keep her at around 60%. Will end up more like 70%, but if I say 60%, she'll probably end up there, just because she tends to want to game things a bit, which I can relate to. So that's the recovery day. And then Friday, because this is, and again, this entire cycle will be the recovery classes. I don't want to call them recovery, but the lower days in class, at least from a joint nervous system perspective, are way more cardio-based this cycle, which is not always the case. So oftentimes it's like joint health and time under tension or bodybuilding and things like that. This time it's really more so like energy systems based. So because of that, we don't need as much conditioning on the days before or after, just because she's getting it there. Whereas if she was just getting joint health, she would want more conditioning on the next day. So that's all a caveat to say we've got this coming up, which is hip-centric strength based on what we have in the name game the next day, because we always do some sort of, or almost always do some sort of strength in that session, and then followed by the name game itself, like the Mekon. And then we'll do some intervals. And I want it to sort of be like novel movements. So like things that you're not probably going to get in like an online format, things that are maybe odd object or horizontal displacement, or things that she just hasn't done a lot of that are going to demand more coordination and a little bit of extra practice, or like maybe having her do the same movements but do them in a different way. Just an opportunity to kind of refine your toolbox as an athlete. And it's supposed to be like more of an interval threshold type format. And then we'll do some bodybuilding, depending what the next day is, full body, or if I'm trying to avoid something based on what's coming up in the previous day. So let's actually throw in Saturday, since that's already written out. I did modify it a bit for her. So this is a workout that we did. It's hundo. That is the main piece. It's 300 double unders, 200 calorie row, 100 calorie air bike. And then the strength is actually another complex. Power clean is an unbroken complex as well, which is important. Power clean, push press, hang squat clean, push jerk, front squat, split jerk. So 6 total movements, big complex there. And for her, that's really it. It's like warm up, strength, workout, cool down. So pretty straightforward there. And as you can see, yes, there's some pulling, but not a lot of volume. There's some squatting, but not a lot of volume. So nothing that's going to be, and besides double unders, which will probably leave her sore because it's 300, it's a decent amount, and they're all at once, so it's a big chunk of work, really high density. But besides that, there's not going to be like anything like pistols and like, for example, like last week was like box jump overs and shoulder overhead, and it was like 100 to 150 depending on the athlete, and that left a lot of people with really like DOMs and triceps and things, which again isn't going to be something that she's going to deal with in this. So we're going to actually have her build to a heavy back squat triple, as the strength. Just because, again, with the clean, it's obviously mimicking a front squat a lot more. Let's make a back squat on this stage just for the sake of variance. And it's just something to touch the nervous system. So basically all of this is getting her warm for that back squat triple. So it's 3 rounds of 200-meter bike erg standing, 200-meter bike erg seated. I found that really encourages a much better, thorough warm-up of knees and ankles, because you're loading the tissues in a much different way when you're doing a standing bike versus just like a seated bike where you're just sort of moving through. So that's all easy. And then 3 rounds of a quadruple squat walk, which is basically getting you into that deep knee flexion compression type position without actually loading it with your body weight. 99 hip rotations, and then holding the bottom of a squat. And then 3 more rounds of her hurdle step over. So basically you put a bar in a rack, you're stepping over it, you're working on knee flexion and warming up the hips. Pausing goblet squats with a kettlebell, 5 inchworms, again, kind of anterior midline, working on some trunk rigidity, and then 3 vertical jumps to wake up the nervous system and prime her to lift heavy. And then all of that is just getting to the heavy back squat triple. So then she'll build to a heavy back squat triple as the first piece. And then next is those like novel intervals. So I'm in an EMOM format this week. One of the movements that I saw her do and she sent to me was a sandbag over the yoke from the week prior. She was kind of, as she was lifting it, she was kind of rotating it to throw it. And I've seen out a lot of tactical game athletes who do that regularly. Most efficient way to do it is you just face it, you pick it up, you lap it, and you kind of use your hip to throw it over. So you stay squared off the entire time. You don't use that rotation element. So I wanted her to practice that. So we got... And I wasn't really sure how challenging it would be with a 100-pound sandbag. So rather than trying to guess on the number of reps to make it correct, I had her do 15 seconds max sandbag over the yoke, minute 1. Also, we haven't really done, there's not much pressing besides the jerk for tomorrow, but there's no strict press or real accessory type stuff after that. So what we ended up doing was, where I put in just regular old kipping handstand push-ups, and I wanted her to build to a tough deficit. So 3 handstand push-ups on that second minute. Again, she'll have 45 seconds of rest before this, so heart rate will be up after the sandbag over yoke, but it should come back down plenty for her to be able to focus on those 3 reps and have quality there. And then finally, her third minute of this rotating EMOM is box jump over step downs that I want her to work on staying a little bit more lateral as she's going over the box and not like doing a full swivel turn on the top of each rep, because A, that's a little bit slower and a little bit more costly, and B, I tend to find that that twisting motion kind of can irritate the knee at times. So working on that is not only going to help her speed, but also her longevity, which is like a double benefit. So that was that. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, we have bodybuilding that I could do. And I was like looking at what was coming the next day. And then I looked at our class workouts again. I was like, man, this class workout is going to fit really well in here. And this is a good example of me. While I have a skeleton and an idea of where I want to go with things, it's ultimately up to me as to what I actually put in there and how much variance I include. So this is our class workout. We had a bunch of prep work, some power clean strength work, and then this was the workout. It was Freaky Friday because it's Friday the 13th. And it is 4 time with a 10-minute cap, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2 bench press, and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of a strict pull-up. So 30 reps of each movement. And I thought this was a great example because while she's going to have a really demanding training day the next day, and she had a high energy systems, or at least a moderate energy systems day, high volume day before that, this, while it's a Metcon, it's not the same systemic feel that, thrusters and row cows would be, for example. It's very isolated to upper body. It's shoulder eccentric. So it's really pushing and pulling accessory work, essentially. So good, place that you could throw that in there, right? One of the things actually I found really beneficial for her in the past was using AMRAP type formats, but using bodybuilding type exercise selection. So like, curls and high damper ski erg and things like that, where you're going to include the muscles a lot, because the intensity of that would go up and there would just be more total work that she's getting done in that amount of time, and it had really good results for her. And then one of the other things I saw was that I was like, this is still not that much volume. She's plenty fine on like time, and we've kind of hit everything we want to hit. So there was extra credit on this Saturday, which was handstand holds, kettlebell snatches, and just calories on erg is sort of like easy. I don't want to call it easy, but moderate extra credit work. So I ended up tacking it onto the end of this day as sort of like a finisher. I don't want to call it like quality can still be high, but it's just sort of like a get it done type piece where you can sort of move through. So 12-minute AMRAP and 70%, 15-second handstand hold for her. I'm going to have her use a band in the rig, and that way she can actually focus on getting that full duration, breathing, and kind of maintaining everything while she's upside down versus just like, failing, handstand hold attempts as you get tired and it having to be multiple sets to get through 15 seconds or something. For her, it makes more sense to just have her move to this. And then 10 kettlebell snatches, hang snatches per side, and 15 calories on an erg, and they get to choose. I really like letting athletes choose the erg if it's something where I don't care what it is, and I just want them to get a little systemic fatigue, because it allows them to be like, well, I feel this way, and my joints feel this way, so I'm just going to do it, right? Typically, athletes are actually pretty good about that for the most part. So there you have it. That is a week for Stacy. Yeah, if you guys found this helpful, let me know. If there's some other sort of avatar demographic you'd like me to program design for, I'm happy to do it. So comment below and let me know what you'd like to see. And if you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Stay the course.